So we'll get started. Welcome everyone. Lovely to see you. I hope your weekend is going well and you're keeping well. I'm Hugh Byrne. This is the Sunday morning class sponsored by the Insight Meditation Community Washington, IMCW. It's obviously based in the DC metro area and with the online, obviously connected much more broadly. And also the Center for Mindful Living, which is under the auspices, is part of IMCW, but has its kind of own vibrant existence as well. As many of you know, and participated yourself before COVID, we had, and even during it, even though we weren't able to be there, we have the space in Tenley Town, and we're offering different programs there. But then after a couple of years, we had to let go of the space and just become virtual. Now we're getting back, more kind of mixed now, hybrid. So on behalf of IMCW and the Center for Mindful Living, very, very warm welcome. As I said earlier, if you're joining us for the first time, please just share your name and whatever, where you're joining us from in the chat if you'd like to. And just a little bit about the class. I've been teaching a class on Sunday morning weekly since the beginning of 2000, I think. So it's going on 20 some years, and under the auspices of IMCW since 2003, so 20 years. And it's always a joy to be together. The format of the class is pretty straightforward. After a few introductory words, which I'm sharing now, we have a guided meditation, about 20 minutes or so. Then there'll be a talk, a Dharma talk, typically about 30 minutes or so. Sometimes it's a little flexible, depending on my level. If I get enthusiastic, it can go on a little bit longer, but I'll try and be as disciplined as possible today. So we have the talk, and then Emily leads us in movement. Thank you, as always, Emily, for your lovely, lovely mindful movement. Help us get into our bodies, and so we're not just kind of sitting for the whole time. And then we'll have a little bit of time for questions, sharing, and announcements at the end. Maybe a short meditation to finish, a few minutes meditation. And what we've been doing is we've been trying to finish pretty promptly at 12 noon. So if people need to get on with their day, they can do so. And if people would like to stay around, we have a possibility, and we'll do it today, I think. We'll have, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, whatever, however long people want to stay, where we'll do some breakout groups. The theme I'm going to be talking on today is, what are we calling this? The heart of the matter, kind of using a cliche, where the rubber meets the road, where kind of all of the Buddha's teachings intersect. I want to share a bit about that today. And I would like us to explore, these teachings, not just as kind of understandings, but as very much as practices in our lives. How do we actually work with the stickiness, the tangles, the stuckness, that we can get caught up in? That in the Buddha's language is called dukkha, or normally translated as suffering, where we're caught up and things aren't the way we want them to be. And how do we untangle ourselves from that? And that's kind of the central question of Dharma teachings, of the Buddha's teachings. You could say, I think, as the Buddha would say, it's the central question of our lives, of the suffering and the end of suffering. But I won't get into that now. That'll be part of the talk this morning. So So the opportunity to actually look at it in our lives, take a few minutes to share each person, etc. So anyone who'd like to do that could do that. So with that, we'll start with a meditation. So invite you to just get comfortable. Sitting. For most of us, it'll be sitting. Some may be walking. Some may be reclining. Whatever's comfortable for you, whatever helps you to be here. Just let yourself arrive and settle. So letting the back be straight, inviting the shoulders to relax. Let your chest be open so you can breathe easily. You could let your hands rest in your lap or on your knees or on your thighs. And if you'd like to, if it's comfortable, you can let your eyes gently close and kind of let your attention drop inward, down into the body. We spend so much of our time in our heads, in our thoughts. This is an invitation to kind of drop down out of the thinking mode and just settle into being here. Feel your body on the cushion or the chair. Feel the contact with the surface beneath you, your thighs, your buttocks, your feet, maybe your hands. Just feeling the sensations, pressure, warmth, tingling, softness, hardness, whatever's present. It can be helpful to take a few longer, deeper breaths as a way of helping us to settle into being here, helping us arrive. Nice full deep in-breath, releasing, letting go on the out-breath. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. And whenever you're ready, just letting the breath settle into its natural rhythm. Breathing in, breathing out. You might find it helpful too to consciously invite a smile to your face, activating the muscles around the eyes and around the mouth. And the smile sends a message to the nervous system, to the brain, that we can be at ease, we can relax. If it's helpful to think of someone who makes you feel happy, or a time that you were feeling happy or joyful, just inviting the smile. Maybe taking it into your heart, into your body. You might put a hand on your belly, on your chest, Just connecting with yourself, with this life. Feeling the rising, the falling of the chest, the belly. You might consciously put aside thoughts of the future, thoughts of the past, thoughts of things going on elsewhere, and just let yourself be as fully here as you can be. And invite the intention to be as fully present as you can be for all that comes up during this meditation. Just to be here. And if your mind goes off somewhere else, just to keep coming back. You might invite to an attitude of kindness and acceptance and non-judgment to all that comes up for you. See if you can both have the intention to be here and the intention to meet your experience with kindness, with acceptance, and without judgment. Just letting everything come and go without adding a story or a narrative about what's going on. Just staying as close as you can to your direct experience. And you might bring your awareness to your breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. In breath, out breath. You could let your breathing be your anchor, what holds you in the present, here now. Breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in. And breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. And as you bring mindfulness to your breathing, you can also be aware of whatever else you're experiencing in the body, the heart, in the mind. Letting your breathing help you hold whatever is coming up. when you experience a noticeable bodily feeling like discomfort, pain, or a pleasant bodily feeling, just let the feeling come, let it be, and then let it go when it's ready to go. And you can let your breathing help you to hold the feeling without resisting or pushing away. Opening to whatever bodily feelings are present, whatever come up, letting them come, letting them be, and letting them go. Like waves rising and falling, cresting and ebbing. When you experience a noticeable emotion or mind state, like sadness, fear, joy, gratitude, anger, whatever mind state or emotion may come up, just let that feeling come and go too. You might notice what accompanies it. If it's sadness, is there a feeling around the heart or in the face, around the eyes? Or if there's fear or worry, is there tightness or tension in the body? Or if there's joy, a more kind of expansive, spacious feeling. Just be aware, allow those feelings to come and go. You can notice any thoughts come up in the mind and just let them come and go too. And whenever you find the mind has got pulled into thoughts or stories, plans or memories or daydreams. Or any kind of thinking that pulls you away, pulls you into the future, the past, or elsewhere. Just choose to let the thought go. Choose not to follow it. Not pushing it away or resisting it, but just letting it go. And come back to the breath. Come back to the body. And just opening to whatever is coming up in the body, in the heart, in the mind. Opening to whatever you're experiencing, using the breath as an anchor or a home base, and allowing whatever comes up, whatever you're experiencing, to come and go. Without clinging, without judging, without resisting, escaping. And whatever comes up, if you find yourself resisting or clinging, just bring that into awareness too. Let that come and go. Finish with this poem by Rebecca Del Rio called Prescription for the Disillusioned. Come new to this day. Remove the rigid overcoat of experience, the notion of knowing, the beliefs that cloud your vision. Leave behind the stories of your life. Spit out the sour taste of unmet expectation. Let the stale scent of what-ifs waft back into the swamp of your useless fears. Arrive curious without the armor of certainty, the plans and planned results of the life you've imagined. Live the life that chooses you, new every breath, every blink of your astonished eyes. And just take your time coming back, opening your eyes, coming back into your space. Seeing everyone here. So welcome anyone who may have joined us after the beginning, the welcoming. Welcome to you all. It's great to be together. Good to see you all. Old friends and perhaps some new ones. So we'll have the talk now. The theme today, I'm calling this the heart of the matter. And some way it's going to be a kind of a culmination of a number of talks that I've been giving here and elsewhere on kind of broadly the theme of untangling the tangles of our lives. And another way of putting it is freeing the heart and the mind. I talked about 5 steps to free the heart and mind, or 5 steps to untangle the tangles of our lives. I like the metaphor of being tangled. And I just want to begin on a kind of big picture level about talking about the Buddha's teachings. As I think almost all of you know, that the Buddha's teachings really all center on and all revolve around the question of suffering and the end of suffering. The Buddha said, I teach one thing, suffering and its end. So some people say, oh, that's 2 things. Well, kind of one thing, suffering and its end, suffering and the end of suffering. His concern, as you know, I think probably with his own story of, wealth and luxury growing up and having everything, but recognizing there was something missing, that he was going to get sick and old and die. And, is there any freedom amidst the vicissitudes of life, the changing flow of life, and the fact that we are all going to die, every one of us, and we'll all experience suffering and loss in our lives. And is there freedom in the midst of this? Is it possible that we can find freedom, that we can experience freedom, or are we just kind of swept along by fate, just like, well, stuff happens and some people are lucky and some are not so lucky? Or is there, do we really have a choice in our happiness, our well-being, or is that just, subject to the gods, to the or to however things happen, to the luck of the dice or whatever. And as you know, the Buddha in his own life found an answer to that question. That he awakened. After it was not an easy process over 6 years of searching, but realized in kind of both senses of the word, realized, achieved, and made real, the understanding that in the midst of everything, in the midst of the earthquakes and the hurricanes and the people, doing harmful things and wars and conflicts and sickness and everything, that it's possible to be free in the midst of that. Doesn't mean we change it. Doesn't mean we become supernatural or avoid, the things that come with being human. But we can change our relationship, and that's really what all of the teachings revolve around. And what I'm going to really be focusing a lot on today is this, our own role in both our suffering and in our freedom. That we are both implicated, but also very much actors. It's not all determined or predetermined. That the choices we make really do determine our well-being and our happiness and our freedom. And so really all of the teachings point to a kind of, which way will I go in any moment? Which way will I go? This way will tend to lead to unhappiness, to suffering. And this way will lead to greater freedom, greater well-being, greater happiness. I mean, we're always kind of on that knife edge in every moment. So that's the importance of the practice to kind of to bring awareness to each moment, that each moment is important, each moment is essential. Am I choosing to be, doing something that's going to be harmful to me or to others? Or am I choosing kindness, compassion, awareness, equanimity, all of the other qualities that the Buddha teaches about? So everything really is about, for the Buddha, was about helping people helping his followers and anyone who was interested and was open to experience freedom in their own lives. The teachings are all, completely pragmatic. They're completely about, what can I do to find greater freedom? And the teachings are about what helps us to do that. So I've been speaking in recent weeks about kind of 5 steps. For me, I found kind of looking in a kind of somewhat systematic way about how do we go from entanglement to greater freedom, for kind of untangling ourselves, getting ourselves unstuck, unhooked. And, I just kind of lay out, I talked the first step is just turning towards our experience. That's kind of fundamental of looking inward. We're often looking outward, what do I have to change to be happy? I've got to get this person out of my life and this person in, and I've got to get this. We're trying to work things out there. But as all of the teachings point to and come back to, it's really all about our relationship to our experience. So turning inward and looking at, what am I experiencing right now? Am I caught up in a tangle, or am I actually experiencing ease and well-being? And if I am, can I deepen that? Can I deepen the happiness? Can I deepen the peace? And can I see when I'm getting stuck and kind of move in a different direction? So turning towards our experience at first. And the second is opening wholeheartedly to whatever we're experiencing, making space for everything. And that's kind of the meditation that we just did was very much about opening to everything. What helps us to do that? What helps us to provide the space to say, okay, yes to this. And can I say yes to this too? And this difficult experience, can I make space for this as well? So we're doing it, we're, in a sense, we're cultivating equanimity, we're cultivating acceptance and kindness to hold all our experience. So in a way that those are the kind of the fundamentals, turning towards our experience, opening to what's present. And then, from there, the practice, I think, is one of investigating, is kind of looking inward at our experience and saying, okay, the third step is to look at, say, is there suffering? Is there something that's painful or difficult right now? In any moment we can turn inward and say, what am I noticing? Maybe it may not be so noticeable in this moment, but maybe when we finish and you go back into your life, you're kind of, oh yeah, I've got to go back to work and got this difficult colleague or the boss, or, I got all these money worries or these health concerns, or, the political situation, or, some way in which we're kind of, we can get tangled, we can get stuck. And I like metaphors that kind of speak to the ways that we can experience this. What the Buddha called dukkha. Unsatisfactoriness. Suffering is the most common translation of dukkha. But I think a better sense is feeling things are not the way we want them to be. Unsatisfactory, dissatisfaction. It could be unhappiness. And just to look at our experience and say, is there suffering right now? Is there unsatisfactoriness, unhappiness, dissatisfaction? And the metaphors, that I find helpful, the idea of being tangled, that things are kind of wrapped around the axle, as the expression goes, that they're not smooth, they're not easy, they're not flowing, they're like, oh, I need this to be different, I want this to be different. Another term is being hooked, in some way that we're not free, we're stuck would be another term. It's often experiences, I don't like this, I don't want this, I don't want things to be this way, this should be different. And I've shared, Pema Chodron's Tibetan expression or Tibetan word for this. I spoke about this some last week, of the term Shenpa, Shenpa, which is often translated as attachment, but she said the best way of describing it is being hooked, like a fish caught on a hook. We're not free. We've become kind of enmeshed, entangled. We become hooked. We've in some way taken the bait. She talks about it. She gives the metaphor or the simile of poison ivy. She says, we humans are like children who have a bad case of poison ivy. Because we want to relieve the discomfort, we automatically scratch. And it seems a perfectly sane thing to do. In the face of anything we don't like, we automatically try to escape. So we're experiencing something that we don't like, and we're wanting it to be different. So suffering, one way of looking at it is suffering as a gap between how things are and how we want them to be. If how things are like this, how things are is like this, and how we're wanting them to be is like that, and there's a difference there, then we will experience this as suffering. We'll experience this as, no, I don't like this. I want it to be warmer right now. I don't like this cold, hypothetically. I want this person not to be annoying me right now, by saying things I disagree with, believing things that I don't believe. I want them to be different. And so insofar as I'm wanting to be different and they're showing up as they are, as they will tend to do, then there'll be suffering. Then there'll be that gap. As they say on the tube in London, mind the gap. Mind the gap. So just some ways in which we can experience this gap or this sense of being hooked. One of the ways is when we're we're wanting something. You know, that experience of we're wanting something we don't have. You know, I want this. You know, I'd love to have this new device or this new car. You know, and we're getting kind of not just in a sense of an aspiration, oh, it'd be nice to have that, or it'd be nice to have a nice meal, but really like the mind is getting contracted around that. I need to have it, you know, and there's some sense of kind of tension around that, of that wanting. You know, we can even use when it's more extreme, we can use the expression of being hooked, you know, being hooked on drugs or on drink, you know, or other things, you know, sex, you know, if you have an addiction, anything we're strongly craving, you know, possessions or a person, you know, it could be video games, you know, that we get so caught up in it. There's such an energy that we get to wanting that we want more of it, and we need to go back to it, and we're feeling lacking if we're not doing it. You know, any of these things that's an expression of being hooked, being tangled. You know, in the craving, a more obvious kind of craving. But we can also experience being hooked when we're in conflict with a person. You know, or somebody at work or a family member who, you know, they're doing things we don't like, they're not living the way we want them to, or their views may be polar opposite to ours, and, you know, they're sharing them in emails and we don't like this and we're annoyed by it. It could be something, you know, we've had a neighbor, you know, with leaving out their dog, you know, quite late into the evening, you know, and it's easy kind of like to get wrapped around that, you know, in one level it's just, well, it's a sound, you know, sound coming and going, rising and passing. But, you know, the story in our mind is, you know, why are they doing this? Why don't they, you know, why are they imposing this on their neighbors, you know? And then the mind goes into judging them and, oh, they're so selfish or thoughtless or whatever. And the story, you know, kind of, we build it into something. And that's the dukkha part of it. That's the suffering. If we could just hear the sound and say, oh, dog's barking. Okay. Then it's not a problem. But it's kind of when we get hooked on that in that way, or we're feeling pain or discomfort and we want it, we don't like it, we want it to be different. That's another example of kind of dukkha, of suffering, of this unsatisfactoriness, or being hooked or being tangled. Another example is when we're stressed or we're worried. You know, what happens is, you know, we might have a lot to do, and the mind then starts saying, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. And then, you know, I've got too much to do, and I'm not going to be able to do it well, and then I'm going to fail, and then people are going to think less of me, and then maybe I'll lose my job, and then maybe, you know, they can kind of build up, you know, then you lose your house, and then you lose your relationship, and you end up in a ditch, naked, hungry, and alone. I'm just say that just because the mind has can just keep creating scenarios because it's all in the mind. So that's just another example of a way we can get caught up in you know, another form of unhappiness, of suffering. You know, other examples, we can get caught up in guilt or shame. You know, where we're kind of hooked around, oh, I did this, I'm so terrible, you know, and ruminating on the past. Again, that's kind of that suffering, getting tangled in that way. You know, and we can get hooked into procrastination, putting off something we need to do, and feeling bad. Oh, I should be doing this, but I keep putting it off. And then again, there's a gap between what's happening and what we think should be happening. And there's the dukkha. There's the dukkha. I don't know if any of those resonate for you, if you have other ways in which you get, thank you, Deb, in which you get kind of hooked or tangled, you know. And I think for each of us, you know, we all have our different expressions of how we get caught, how we get tangled. It reminds me, I think it's the beginning of Anna Karenina of Tolstoy saying, all happy families are alike, but unhappy families differ in their own ways. It's almost like all joy is alike in a way, all genuine happiness, but we have a million different ways in which we suffer. We have all our individual ways in which we get hooked, in which we get tangled. So looking at our own, how is it for me? Where do I get stuck? Where do I get tangled? And then when we do that, we can say, okay, that brings us to the next step, which is, what is my role in this tangle? What is my role in this being hooked? So this first one is recognizing, investigating and recognizing our suffering. The next step is the second noble truth, is to see that the cause of suffering is always something that we are doing or not doing. There's some way in which we are playing a role in our unhappiness. It's not just the thing itself. It's not just the dog barking. It's not just the difficult colleague. It's not just the sickness or the busyness or whatever. It's something we're adding to that. And this is, we tend to think that it's this person is doing that. This politician who's, doing something, passing laws that we think are harmful, they're doing this and they are causing my suffering, our suffering or whatever. But in order for it to be suffering, there has to be something that we're doing that is unskillful, that's unhelpful. Suffering isn't caused by any of these experiences or situations. They're precipitating, they're sparks. But the cause, as the Buddha says, the Buddha talks about it, the cause is craving. There's something that we're doing, we're holding on to, or we're resisting that is creating or perpetuating the suffering. The key is suffering isn't a thing. It's not solid or permanent. It's always a relationship. Suffering is always a relationship. And it's really always an unskillful relationship to our experience or to what is happening. So I'm wanting a family member or a colleague to be acting differently. And it's that holding on to them being different than they are that is the cause of the suffering, not the fact that they're doing it. The dog barking or the family member sending emails that we disagree with is just a thing. It's not suffering in itself. It's only when we take the bait, when we grab hold of the hook and get hooked by it, that there's suffering. And it's not the wanting that's a problem. It's the clinging. We can want something, and if we want something, assuming it's not a harmful thing, we can want something, and that's it's often it used to be said that kind of desire is the problem. Desire is an energy of life. Desire isn't a problem. Clinging is a problem. It's when the desire turns into clinging that it becomes problematical for us in our life. So this, in the language of the Buddha, he calls this craving. In the Pali language, it's tanha, T-A-N-H-A, which literally translates as thirst. So it's that sense we all know what it feels like to be thirsty. But what we tend to do is when we're thirsty, when we're clinging in that way, we drink salt water, which makes us more thirsty. It's like Pema Chodron talking about the Shempa and we're itching, but what we're doing is we're scratching the itch. We're needing to scratch the itch. So this is the second noble truth, that craving is the cause of suffering. It's not the thing, it's not the emotion, the pain. it's how we're relating to it. It's the clinging. I shared, and probably familiar with this, that kind of, whatever that term is, I call it a saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Suffering is the add-on. Think of it as an add-on to our experience. And we're probably, many of you, familiar with the two arrows metaphor. The first arrow is you feel you've been hit by the arrow, ouch, pain, really hurting. And the second arrow is like, who did this? How could they do this to me? They're terrible people. I'm going to give them, all this kind of add-ons are what caused the suffering. The pain is just the pain, and in life, pain is inevitable. It's the suffering that is the optional part. And if we can deal with the suffering in a skillful way, if we can avoid it by saying, okay, can I just stay with the pain without adding anything to the experience, then we can experience freedom even in the midst of the pain. The pain being life, pain being whatever happens in life. If we can hold it and meet it in an open and a spacious way, then we can experience happiness in the midst of difficulties, challenges, pain, sickness, aging, death, and the whole enchilada, the full catastrophe. We can experience ease, well-being, and happiness. This is really the hub, the core, as I said, the heart of the matter of Buddha's teachings. I meet with a group. We've been meeting together for 17 years or so. And one of the members of the group shared about how she was driving along and came to a light behind somebody in the car in front. And the woman opened, person, I think it's a woman in the car in front, opened the window and started tossing stuff out of the car, Kentucky Fried Chicken boxes and and my friend, the person in the group, how do all of this kind of, all of this, and she shared how it must have been a longer light, but she shared how she got out of the car and she started picking up the stuff that the person had thrown out of the car. And it wasn't, you could do that in different ways, right? You could do it and say, okay, the person, let me clean things up. But she was sharing how she didn't do it in that way. She did it like, I'm going to look at this person and tell her, give her a sense of what a selfish, thoughtless, etc. kind of person she is. And she said the woman just kept, the car in front just kept looking ahead, wouldn't look at her. But there's the first arrow is, the stuff is getting tossed out of the car. And maybe there's a kind of inevitability of the mind going, oh, this is unpleasant. This is unpleasant, that I don't like to see, trash, just people throwing trash. But before it gets to the judging and the separation of like, oh, yeah, I don't find this appealing. And you could even get up and pick things up without it being like, I'm gonna show this person how badly they're behaving, So my friend was sharing this story, and what was interesting was she was saying, I felt all this righteousness, and we talked about it as like the second arrow, and we can all relate to that. You've seen people doing something or hearing about it and doing something, and we're getting hooked around that. We're like, how could they do this? What a terrible person, how mean, how selfish, and all of this. And what was interesting was then my friend, had enough awareness to see that. And she said, oh, what a terrible person I am for judging this person. So then she added the third arrow to the second arrow. She was judging the judging. She was judging her own righteousness, in the face of the first arrow. So what's interesting is how we can add arrows to arrows. We can add, we could get angry with ourselves for being judgmental, or, or we can just have layers and layers of judgment, just as we can have layers and layers of fear. We're fearful of something and we don't want to go there. And we're actually fearful about the fear. We don't want to go to the place of fear. We don't want to feel it, and, how we can add things. So this is the second arrow. This is what the Buddha talked about as the craving that causes suffering. So our job our work, our task is to really see how we're adding to our experience, how we're staying tangled. And often it's our beliefs and our stories that keep us hooked. This person should be different. I should be different. I shouldn't be doing this. So this is the second noble truth. And in the sequence of these steps, this is the fourth step, open to our experience, turn towards our experience, open wholeheartedly, investigate the suffering, and then explore what is my role in this suffering. And what's key is when we see clearly how our holding, how our resistance is perpetuating the suffering, is creating and perpetuating the suffering, then in seeing, we can let go. Because if we can't see, there's no chance really of letting go. If we're not aware, if we haven't brought it into awareness, so we're bringing it into awareness and we're saying, oh, I'm actually implicated in this suffering I'm feeling, in this unhappiness I'm feeling. There's something that I'm doing or not doing. There's something that I'm not seeing. There's something that I'm believing that is helping perpetuate this suffering. And I can, in seeing that, I can see, oh, actually, it would result in more happiness and more freedom if I could let go of that, if I could choose not to keep perpetuating it, not to keep judging myself, not to keep judging somebody else, not to keep clinging to the thing that I'm clinging to, if I could let go. And it's the seeing. I share this often. Rob Bayer, wonderful teacher, it was his third anniversary of his death actually this week. He died on the feast of Vesak, which commemorates the birth, enlightenment, and death of the Buddha. He died on Vesak of 2020, and this is his third anniversary. But his book is called Seeing That Frees. What's key is seeing clearly is what frees us. When we see something clearly, then we can let go. When we see clearly how holding on to this hot coal is actually burning me, then I can let go. When the seeing becomes clear, this is vipassana. Vipassana means clear seeing or insight. Mindfulness, awareness helps us to see clearly. We bring what is unconscious or unaware into awareness. And we see clear. When we see clearly, then we can let go. And this is the third noble truth, the noble truth of letting go of suffering, that freedom is possible. The Buddha talked about it as nirvana, quenching, a letting go, a freedom that comes from letting go of clinging. And what I want to finish up with today, and I've shared a little bit last week, some quotes from Pema Chodron, particularly her book, Taking the Leap, Freeing Ourselves from Old Habits and Fears. Oh, vanished. Freeing Ourselves from Old Habits and Fears, Taking the Leap. And she has some lovely, it's a very, very short book. It's like 75 pages, and yet it's very, very rich in practice. She's a wonderful teacher. And I want to just share a few quotes from it about how we work with the dukkha, how we work with the clinging, and what helps us to let go and experience freedom. She says, a little bit kind of background. She says, our energy and the energy of the universe are always in flux, but we have little tolerance for this unpredictability. And we have little ability to see ourselves and the world as an exciting, fluid situation that is always fresh and new. Instead, we get stuck in a rut, the rut of I want and I don't want, the rut of Shempa, the rut of continually getting hooked by our personal preferences. So we've been talking about getting hooked, and she speaks about how we can work with it when we're hooked. She says the approach here is radical, deep-rooted. We're encouraged to get comfortable with, begin to relax with, lean into whatever the experience may be. So as in the meditation, just to open to whatever is present. We're encouraged to drop the storyline and simply pause, look out and breathe. Simply be present for a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, a whole lifetime with our own shifting energies and with the unpredictability of life as it unfolds, wholly partaking in all experiences just exactly as they are. And then she says a little earlier, actually in the book, she says, the message here is that the only way to ease our pain is to experience it fully. You know, that's been the message. Only way to ease our pain is to experience it fully. We normally think that the way to ease our pain is to cover it up or avoid it or push it away. But what she's saying and what the teachings say is can I stay with what's here, what I'm experiencing? It doesn't mean we don't take an Advil or whatever it might be. You know, we don't choose to change things. We can do that. But knowing what to change and when and what to accept. She says, learn to stay with uneasiness, learn to stay with the tightening, learn to stay with the itch and urge of Shempa, so that the habitual chain reaction doesn't continue to rule our lives and the patterns that we consider unhelpful don't keep getting stronger as the days and months and years go by. And I shared this last week. Someone once sent me a bone-shaped dog tag that you could wear on a cord around your neck. Instead of a dog's name, it said, sit, stay, heal, Heal. We can heal ourselves and the world by training in this way. So our practice is to keep coming back, and then we come back. That's the fifth step, is to let go. The letting go that comes with seeing clearly. We can let go of clinging, and that letting go leads to freedom and leads to peace. Sometimes these teachings can sound like, oh, acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. And it sometimes can sound like passivity, that we never change anything or nothing. We always have to just, someone does something terrible. Oh, that's just the way it is, And that's not what I'm saying, and certainly not what the Buddha was saying. Knowing the difference between what needs to be changed and what to accept and what to change, as with the serenity prayer. Changing what we can change, accepting what we can't change, and having the wisdom to know the difference. And I love this quote from Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now. He says, to be in alignment with what is means to be in a relationship of inner non-resistance with what happens. So this, to be in alignment with what is, means to be in a relationship of inner non-resistance with what happens. It means not to label it mentally as good or bad, but to let it be. To let it be. Now, then he asks the question, does this mean that you can no longer take action to bring about change in your life? And then he answers, on the contrary, when the basis of your action is inner alignment with the present moment, your actions become empowered by the intelligence of life itself. When the basis of your action is inner alignment with the present moment, saying yes to what is, then your actions become empowered by the intelligence of life itself. It's like when we let go, you think of that saying of Ajahn Chah's, let go a little, you'll experience a little peace, let go a lot, you'll experience a lot of peace, let go completely and you'll experience complete peace. And then he ends with the line, your struggle with the world will be at an end. I think what the teachings point to is we can end our struggle with the world. We can end our struggle with the world. We don't have to be in conflict with the world. That doesn't mean we don't change things that we think are helpful to change, but we do it from that place of inner alignment with what is, as Eckhart Tolle says. We're doing it from that place of openness and acceptance and not from the place of clinging. That makes all the difference in the world. So we can change. We can, if we're in that place of inner alignment with the truth, with reality, with life as it is, then more naturally, what will naturally happen is we'll have the wisdom and the compassion to act in the world, to change what needs to be changed. But we're doing it not from a place of craving or clinging, but from a much more spacious place. Pema Chodron comes back and she shares 4 ways of working. She says, come back to square one. Come back to, let me just get that little quote and I'll finish with that. She says, come back to square one. Where is square one? Oh, yeah, here. Just keep coming back to square one. And if square one feels edgy and restless and filled with Shempa, still you just come back there. The Shempa itself is not the problem. The ignorance that doesn't acknowledge that you're hooked, that just goes unconscious and allows you to act it out, that's the problem. So it's the being hooked that's the problem. And so seeing clearly, and she finishes when she talks about 4 R's, the letter R, for finding freedom from suffering. Recognize the Shempa, refrain from scratching, that's letting go of the clinging. Relax into the underlying urge to scratch. Just allow the feelings to come and go as we were doing in the meditation. And 4th, resolve to continue to interrupt our habitual patterns. So recognize, refrain, relax, and resolve to continue, to just keep practicing with being with. And then when we do get hooked again, we just come back to square one. We practice again. So I'll finish there, getting unhooked. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's a lovely short article from Pema Chodron on getting unhooked. Really recommend the book as well, Taking the Leap. So we'll finish here. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope that was helpful. And anything that wasn't helpful, just leave on your cushion or on your seat, and it gets swept up afterwards. And Emily will now lead us in some movement. Thank you.
So let me invite you to rise up, to stand up and feel your feet, taking that moment to place one foot down and then the other, swaying, just moving side to side, and then open up your arms. Being gentle with yourself, part of kindness. Judging if you are stiff. Rather, acknowledging it. And then open up wide. Expand, embracing the space around you. Lifting up your arms, grasp your left wrist in your right hand. Extend out over to the right. And you might just investigate how you did this by lifting up a little. With an inhale, exhale, soften your elbows, soften that right shoulder. Breathing into your left rib cage. Soften again. Inhale up, switch wrists, and over to the left. Extending out, and then again, lift up a little. With the inhale, soften down. Allow and release. Breathing into the right rib cage. And release. Inhale up. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders, come into your dance with your body, feeling different parts, and roll them the other way. Draw your hands up into cactus arms. Holding the elbows up, exhale, float those arms down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, down. Inhale, rising up, extend your arms out. Flip that left palm and take a look at in that direction and switch to the right. Palm of the left goes down or around. Back to the left. Back to the right. To the left. And finally to the right. Lower your arms, roll your shoulders independent. Being gentle doesn't have to be perfect. And rolling them the other way. Now lifting your arms up, tap on your head, feeling the response of your skull to the tapping on the top, moving to the back of the head, just a little bit. It could be back, but I'm still on the top edge. And then around, just around the head, surrounding, circling. Now to the sides, you could do your temples, but do them gently. And then down your face, down to the jaw. Noticing how your jaw connects underneath your ears. Then moving along the jaw, exploring, back to the edge, and then down the neck. And now, up, or pound, or slap, whatever feels good. Breathing in, exhaling softly. And then drop the hands down. Take a breath in, exhaling softly. Draw your arms up overhead. Place your palms together. Draw your hands down to your heart. Turning out to the group, sending kindness. And then sending kindness to the earth. And on an exhale, whoosh up. Once more to the heart, to the group, to the ground. and whoosh. And now to your heart. Thank you for your practice.
Lovely. Thank you, Emily. Lovely to get into the body after sitting for a while. So we got a few minutes. Just a reminder, we'll finish around 12 today and invite folks to stay around if you'd like to and if you're able to, and we'll have some time for sharing in small groups and also in the full group. So we'll only have a few minutes here for maybe what we'll do is we'll save the sharing Q&A. If you want to share anything in the chat, please feel free to do so. But just given we'll have a short meditation to finish and some announcements. So maybe we'll take the time doing that, and then we'll have the after 12 sessions. So maybe let's just take a few moments to come inward again. This will just be for about 3 minutes. Just bringing a kind attention to whatever is present for you right now. You might just notice anything that may have changed in the last hour and a half or so. And holding whatever is present with kindness and with acceptance. This moment, this experience, just as it is. And the invitation to meet our moments wholeheartedly and fully. So much of our difficulties, our tangles, our suffering comes from not being willing or able to stay with our present moment experience. So learning to stay and be here now, be present with this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. This from Wu Men, 10,000 flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, snow in winter. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. So I just mention, as we do, that there's no cost for coming to the class today. If you are able and inclined, you're invited to make a donation. In the tradition of Dana, D-A-N-A, generosity is how the teachings have come down to us through 2,500 years from the time of the Buddha. And so your generosity, your dana, is gratefully appreciated.